And joining me now in the studios, I'm Painter and doing the Brogue. I don't know. At my age, it's my birthday today, by the way. At my age, it's you start to lose certain parts of your brain particles, and it's like, so we're talking about Remembering Post. It was 100 years ago or so from now when the winter dam's gates were closed and the flooding began or had finished. Tell us a little bit more about this event tomorrow. Kind of what's happening at New Post.
So March 15th of this year was the 100-year celebration of the actual opening of the dam itself.
Yeah.
We had a minor honoring that. So now what we're working on is the finalization of the flooding occurred actually on August 1st of 1920. So our remembrance is as close as we can get to that we can, to honor basically the finalization of that flooding devastation that occurred on the Newport. So it's an honoring and a remembrance of people that are both buried under there yet,
Yeah.
under the waters themselves, and some that are still on the island, as well as speaking to the strength of the individuals that
Sure.
to survive
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a history and story out there that some people I don't think really understand. I mean, we got fishermen and sporting people out on the flowage. I don't think they really understand what they're sitting on top of in their boats and pontoons. And you brought me out there a couple of times now, and just the richness of the history of Post and other communities around it. But we're talking specifically about Post. What was the community like before the flooding? What was it like out there?
Um, well, back in those days, we actually had uh, the post itself got its name from a trading post, or that is the name that it ended up with.
Okay.
There was a trading post that was installed back there back in, I think it was around 1865. Thaddeus there built up a trading post. Prior to that, we always knew it as Pequawong. Um, that's kind of where the river, uh, a bay or a lake off of a river. That's what that means.
Yeah.
There's some that interpret it as being where the river bends. Well, anyways, prior to that, we had a community going on up there that we had stores, we had a police station, a post office, we had resorts,
Wow.
cabins. It was a pretty thriving
Yeah.
community, primarily because of because of the richness of everything that went on there. The river, we had the fishing and the ricing and everything else that was going on, but also it was a main thoroughfare for those people that were traveling from Green Bay or Milwaukee up towards the Hayward area itself.
Okay.
One of the main roads came right through the post, so that
Yeah.
brought a lot of traffic through there, and that's how it became a big thriving community. In addition to the different businesses and homes and such that we had there, we also had there were two different churches along with the Meday Society out there as well. So
Okay.
along with that, we had the graveyards and such. So figuring that we settled that area back in the early 1600s, and we actually have records of some existence prior to that. There were a lot of people that were buried out there.
Yeah.
Over that 200 plus years, and when they created that dam, created the Chippewa Flowage, a lot of our family members were actually submerged under those waters.
Yeah.
There wasn't a very concerted effort to remove those graves at the time, and I've got history of all of that. And at the event, I'm going to speak to that a little bit as well, because we've got to dispel some myths out there that we were all okay with what happened out there, and everybody was made whole as a result of that.
Right, because there was a lot of promises made by the electrical companies, and a lot of property exchanged hands, and things were supposed to be restored, and really hasn't been done that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So then the gates were closed at the dam, and this flooding didn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It took several days, weeks, maybe months to do. Right.
They closed the gates on March 15th, and it wasn't fully completed until August 1st.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I
we'll have them
remember
once.
at the casino, there were some stories, harrowing stories of people who refused to leave and actually had to be dragged off their land,
Hmm.
to, be saved at least, and lose all their belongings and stuff. And it's just horrific to think about what was lost there. Not just those who are still those who have passed on and their burial grounds are buried, but homes and, sometimes cattle and other livestock, and just livelihoods were totally enveloped around water. And a lot of that stuff still stands out there. That's amazing.
Yeah, you when you get out and you actually see what remains out there, it's pretty harrowing, I guess. We had a recent tour out with some of the elders, along with some other visitors that came in from Washington D.C. I had the opportunity to take them out
Oh,
and show them
yeah.
some of the different areas. And the one thing that's most impactful to most people is when we go by Church Island out there and we show them some of the remaining graves and some of the tombstones that are still standing
Yeah.
out there with
Yeah.
bodies that are still under those. And then we talk about all of the I guess the erosion that's occurring out there,
Yeah.
because we are some of those islands right now that have a lot of those bodies still on them are eroding away due to a lot of the tourism and so on and so forth, that the people just aren't really aware of what's down there. And that part of what we need to do this through this course is actually provide a little bit more of that education so that they'll understand a lot of what's going on out there. I know Doreen's brother is very, very active in trying to put up some kind of no wake zones around some of these different areas out there
Oh,
so that we're
sure.
not eroding away. And
Yeah.
um, as as short as 2 years ago, I believe it was, we had the jawbone of a young lady actually get exposed, and one of the local resort owners brought it to our attention. So we had to go back out, mark
Oh,
there, went out and digitally reinterred it again. But just during our recent um, touring out there again this past year, we saw that where he had interred that particular jawbone is now exposed again. So now the whole body eventually is going to be
sure.
showing back up again. So we need to do something to preserve those islands out there. And this is all again a remembrance and an honoring of those people that were down there. But we also need to make it an awareness that we need to do something rather quickly here to stop this
Sure.
erosion that's occurring out there.
Yeah. I saw on our tour there was a couple of islands that had some, physical barriers that were put up to help stop the eroding. A lot of beaches had rocks and large boulders that were put up. Is that something that this organization, or maybe the tribe, is going to try to do to help stop that erosion, or how do we do that besides putting up signs that no one might see or really listen to?
Uh, I've got a couple of different ideas, but right now we need to get the tribe. The tribe needs to become more aware as a whole. That
Yeah.
there, even though we've got this pristine lake that's over there right now, that people, we have a lot of tourists that come through that take advantage of that. It's not fully in their, I guess, not in their direct line of sight at this point to do anything about.
Right.
And those rocks and such that you're talking about out there on our lake, on our islands that the tribe owns, we've only got two barriers up that I'm aware of, and they look more like the dinosaur bones, the dinosaur backbones that are out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Those are ones that were put up by the tribe. The other ones that you're seeing right now, where those rocks are lining the sides, that isn't because of anything that we've put down. That's both from the formation of the original river that came through, and
Oh,
they were
okay.
pushed up into some of those islands, and the erosion itself is exposing those
Exposing
rocks, and
those.
they're falling back down to the shorelines.
Okay.
So that's one of the other things.
Yeah. So let's talk about the event a little bit, Doreen. You're the expert, not the expert, but the person who's really helped us with the timeline. How are things going? This is all starting tomorrow, August 12th, Saturday, out at the New Post Community Hall. That's where kind of everybody can gather, but there's a ceremony that's happening out at Moon Cove prior to the 2 o'clock gathering. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, we have two new docks installed at the New Post Beach, and that's going to be the starting point where we want to get the people out onto the pontoons. We have 5 pontoons that are going to be running starting at 11 a.m. And we actually have golf carts. We're going to be able to bring elders down to this point
Oh,
and
okay.
get them out on the pontoons and get them out onto the island. We're going to have the Badger Singers out there, and we're also going to have Dennis White out there for the ceremony, which is going to start at 1 p.m. and probably wrap that up at around 2, and then get everybody back to New Post. And we're going to have the speakers over at the community center, and after that, we're going to have a traditional meal. So
Okay.
we have a really good crew that's going to be preparing that meal during the day, probably tonight and during the day, and
Right.
have a really nice traditional meal.
Wow.
And then finish up with some honor songs and some more speaking over there.
Sure.
And we're also going to have some displays, family displays, pictures of Old Post and families that were affected, and then a lot of families that had to move away from the area too, with different areas of the reservation, their families. We're going to have those displays set up so that people can walk through and look and
Yeah.
actually see those. And we're hoping to get a lot of young people over there that don't know their history of their families and what they went through, So hopefully that'll work out,
Yeah.
to get the younger people in there and get them aware of and get more interest in their, and they can talk to their elders and get their stories. I was just bringing my uncle into work this morning, and he was telling me some more stories that I've never heard before. And
Wow.
so a lot of that stuff we need to preserve. And
Yeah.
so hopefully, our event, tomorrow is going to be a nice day.
Yeah.
We're gonna just
Little break in the rain, and
little
it'll
break in
be
the rain, and we're gonna have tents set up, tables, chairs, people be comfortable. So, and then just a reminder to people that are gonna go out on the island, on the pontoons, please just remember to bring a folding chair, lawn chair, so that you're comfortable out there for the ceremonies that are going on.
okay. And who are some of the speakers that are going to be in the afternoon? Do you know that list of names yet?
The speakers we have are gonna be Tom, Mark there. We have Rick St. Germain. We also have Dennis White's going to be doing the prayers. And then I think my brother Tim is going to speak. So it's going to be descendants of some of the families that were out there.
Yeah.
Lorraine and Gary.
Lorraine,
Yeah.
Gary Claus, Lorraine,
Mhm.
Jay.
Wow.
We're going to actually ask anybody in the audience as well if they have any comments or if they'd like to say anything also. We're going to open it up to them also. So give them an opportunity to give some feedback.
Mm-hmm.
We had during the powwow itself, we actually had an honor song as well. We've labeled off some of the surnames of the descendants from out on Post at that time, and we asked them to come down and participate. And I'm sure that a lot of them were probably surprised that they were descendants of people from the Post area at that time, because
Right.
like I say, when that devastation occurred, if you had a support mechanism in place, then a lot of those family members remained there. But if they didn't have that support mechanism in place, then they went up across the reservation to wherever that support mechanism was. So we had people that were from the Signer area, from the reserve area, from the Whitefish, from Round Lake communities that were all direct descendants from members of Post.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we're hoping that this piques a little bit of their interest as well, so they start to think about it. There's a lot of those members that were out there that had no idea what actually happened out there, even within the reservation community.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. So
Yep. It's a rich history. When I've learned, like you said, when you told me about what Old Post was like and that what it was back in that time, and the civilization that was there, and all the for all intents and purposes the modern lifestyles that they had with buggies and horses and banks and jails, and people think, well, Old Post, it was more ancient sort of things, and yes, it was an older period of time without all the uh, cell phones and electronics that we have today, but it was a thriving community, of people, and it was well organized.
Yeah, it was up and coming, and one of the things that did harm to us. So this whole uh, scheme, I guess, started off in the late 1800s to create this dam. It was more of a opportunity to prevent flooding downstream. So they went ahead. They were scheming on this way back in the late 1800s, even though the dam itself didn't start until 1923. They were scheming on it way back in the 1800s. So
Oh yeah,
as part of that, there was a road built that was from coming up from Winter up Highway. They created Highway W, then turned into Highway B, and so they were able to circumvent the Post community at that point. So after that community was flooded out and everything was moved to what we call New Post now, um, there were no longer any direct roads right in New Post coming from the Winter area.
sure.
So now everything diverted around. So though they tried to make a go of it back there after the fact, it dwindled. The economy just dried up completely. There were a few vacationers and such that would still come in there, but it was nothing like it had been before. So that community just gradually just fizzled away, basically. So now
Yeah.
it's just a community of homes down there that, yeah, what used to be something really, really thriving, it dwindled down considerably.
Sure. Yeah. It's not the celebration that some would say it is, that we created this great um, sporting area of we know as the Chippewa Flowage. Yes, it's great to the economy, and yes, there is some benefit to the tribe because of that newer economy. But how we came about this was really tragic, and something just to, like they say here on your brochure, it's a remembrance of this and a recognition of what it was and where we are today. And then you move forward, but you got to move forward.
Yeah.
And but it's good to remember and have that history, because a lot of that history still sits on the bottom of the lake, and we need to remember those things.
Some of the other items that I neglected to mention also at this point, the other things that were real robust around that particular area was the rice. So
Oh
we had
yeah,
wild rice. We had more wild rice around those general areas there than you can shake a stick at. I mean, it was huge. That was big. We had cranberry marshes all over out there. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand or don't realize, when the formation of the Chippewa Flowage, it wasn't just about Post. It wasn't just about Pakwewang. We've taken the opportunity to draw in on some of the original maps that they used to
yeah.
survey back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
and we show the main rivers that were feeding down into Pakwewang itself, and all of the different tributaries that were feeding into those different lakes and such. And it's huge. I mean, it wasn't just Post that was impacted. It goes all the way over to Chief
Right.
Lake. It goes all the way up to Riverside. It goes all the way up to Crane Lake. So there were people that were living along these tributaries all throughout these years. And when they flooded this area, it devastated everybody. It took out all of that wild rice. It took out all of the cranberries, all of the blueberry patches that used to be all over out there. Everything just got wiped out completely.
And the wildlife, white-tailed deer that were there, that the community relied on for food, as well as wild rice and stuff. It was the wildlife had to move and dissipate.
Yep. It talks about there was only 500 acres that were overtaken from the flooding itself that impacted the tribe. But that was just tribally owned stuff. You got to remember back in the day, back in the 1800s, when they had the allotment system, that there was a lot of lands that were allotted to the native people out there as well. And all of those lands got bought out by the power company for way under. And that was another myth that needs to be dispelled. That there was a thought that the native received the same amount that the non-native did for the prices, because non-natives were impacted by this, of course, as well.
Yeah.
But we got nowhere near what those people did. So we were being swindled basically all the way through that thing. But there was another 6,000 acres of land that was allotted land that was impacted by the flooding of this thing. So don't allow people to just say it was only 500 acres. There was another 6,000 acres on top of that.
Wow.
So we're talking about a 15,000 acre lake at that time that was being created. So we were almost half of that lake was impacted some native people one way or another.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And that map that you referred to, you're actually having someone work on updating that so we can show obviously the contours that were happening then, but then with color, you've added to where that flooding and what it's covered up, right?
that's correct.
And is that going to be on display?
Yes, it's actually should be getting delivered up here today.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got two larger ones, one that we're going to keep for ourselves down in the post area, and the other one that we're going to bring back over to the tribal office. And then we've got some smaller ones for the committee at this point that we're going to hand out to the committee members so they get a better understanding of it. But then it'll be available for printing for future whoever else wants to get their hands on it.
Yeah.
They can come through. I'd imagine the tribe would probably manage that
Yeah.
process.
Sure. Well, we're talking about the Remembrance of Post. This is a ceremony that's on tomorrow, starting at 1 o'clock out at Loon Cove. Actually, the pontoons will start bringing people out there at around 11 o'clock, and there'll be a brief ceremony, honoring ceremony out at Loon Cove with some speakers, prayers, and an honor song. And then a larger gathering at 2 o'clock at the New Post Community Center. And this will be an ongoing event throughout the day with speakers, photo displays. There was mention of these foam core cards that are, and I know the university has been working on putting together a whole bunch of these, and some of the families were given some of these display cards. So we'll have, I don't know if we'll have enough easels to hold everything, but there's a lot of photographs that people can go through and see that history and hear about that history. And then, like you said, 5 o'clock, there'll be a traditional dinner served out at the community hall. And
So, Mark, if I
Yeah,
could,
go
the
ahead.
time frame between, so the event out on the island is going to occur from 1 to 2 o'clock. And we're talking about starting the event in the post community hall area from 2 to 7.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lag in there between the 2 to 3 o'clock time frame as we're transporting people back.
right, yeah,
But definitely show up then, because that'll give you the opportunity to walk through and look at those picture boards that we're going to have set up in a separate tent
yeah,
that people can walk through and gaze and all of those. And you might just see a family member out there, or you might see some history that you didn't understand
Sure.
or realize that actually existed. So
yeah. And Doreen, you mentioned that for the out at the island, the people are needing to bring their own chairs. Will there be chairs at the main event at the community center?
Yes, we'll have
Okay.
tables and chairs
Okay.
under tents so people are comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that not everybody had to bring lawn chairs. It was just those who were going out to the island.
Yeah,
Yeah.
be comfortable up there.
And I learned something interesting too about, the whole purpose of the dam wasn't hydroelectricity, which was, you think the electric company that put this in would be looking at hydroelectric, but there was a alternative
ulterior motive.
yes, for all this. And what was that, Tom? What happened with it?
So in the 1800s, like I said, the power company conspired. There's an easier word to put it instead
Yes.
of scheming. With the federal government, along with state officials as well, to create a dam up here. And the purpose of that was for flood control downstream, because they had already created some downstream that had hydroelectric plants on them already.
Okay.
But all of the waters that were coming in from these different lakes and tributaries and such that created the headways of the Chippewa River actually was too much for those dams to handle downstream. So those communities started to flood. Eau Claire, Chippewa, Episode, those different areas started to flood out. So they needed some way to be able to manage that flow of water. So that's where the scheming came into. Let's go ahead and put one up here, and instead of allowing the floods to impact these communities downstream, who cares? It's a little Indian community up here. Let's
Right.
go ahead and devastate that whole thing instead.
So this wasn't a logging thing. It
No, it
was
had nothing to do with the logging thing whatsoever. It was all about like I said, flood control for those things downstream. And they were constantly pushing and pushing and pushing. It wasn't until they got a couple of senators in there that actually pushed it hard down in Washington, where they were able to actually get some buy-in, that's when they created the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And once that was,
Oh,
then they used the guise of energy creation to build that dam and then back up the waters up here.
wow.
But one would think that once they created that dam under the guise of energy creation, that they would put a hydro plant on it, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not at all.
Now there's one there now. When was that built?
That was in the mid '80s. After the long fights went on with the dam takeover back in the '70s and such, they finally got back out and negotiated the opportunity for us to go ahead and put in a hydro plant there. So in '84, I believe it was, they started those discussions, and shortly thereafter, we got the license from that same Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah.
Yep, to go ahead and put in that hydro plant. At that point, we gained ownership of the dam and then the things that are sitting alongside of it. However, we don't control the flow. We have no total control of the flow through that thing. Right now, we've just got to maintain a minimum flow through it. If it gets too high, if the flow starts getting too high, then they won't purchase any of that energy back from us. It's
So the tribe owns everything, but they don't control anything.
That's sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it?
Oh, wow. That's
so you see the water levels that are dropping out there right now. A lot of that has to do primarily with the minimum of flow that we have to maintain for the wildlife downstream, which, okay, we get that. But why do we drop it 8 feet every year? That raising and lowering of that water is going to be impacting.
It causes erosion. Yeah.
It contributes to that erosion that's going on out there right now.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk about it, helping the fisheries and such, but I have yet to. You got to prove it to me, because I've lived on this lake most of my life, and I haven't seen that have any kind of an impact other than a negative impact on them by raising and lowering those things all the time.
Right. Yeah.
You're moving the spawning beds for the walleye that are there all the time. The traditional spawning beds are no longer there. So they may be born one year and they try to come back up just like a salmon. It may not be there the following year. It may change, or it may be too fast, or they always wait until our time to go out and fish before they start opening up those dams, and they let that water flow.
Sure.
Very, very fast.
Well, this is all fascinating, and if listeners are interested in hearing more about this, obviously there'll be more in some of the history things that Rick St. Germain's doing Wednesdays, but this is a Remembrance of Post event starting tomorrow, 11 o'clock. The pontoons will fill up for the elders who need to go out there to Loon Cove for an honoring ceremony. And then at between 2 and 3 o'clock, they'll start to head back. 3 o'clock at the New Post Community Hall gathering. There'll be the main event and a lot of the speakers and photo displays and stuff. Tom and Doreen, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about this event.
You bet. Thank you for having us.
All right. Woo, we cut that close. Yeah. Well, good. No, yeah.
Radical, yeah.
Are you calling him on? All right, we'll have fun setting everything up today. I'll be out there probably 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
So the casino, I confirmed with them yesterday to see what it's mine. You can't bring the drum